So, hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Book Cafe Podcast. In today's episode, we will be talking about this book right here behind me entitled Keeper of Faith. And it is written by none other than a legend of our sport, Mr. Tatenda Taibu. And I'm extremely delighted to have him with us for today's episode to be able to talk about the book itself. But before we get into all that, let me first introduce the author himself, Mr. Tatenda Taibu. Hi, Tatenda. Welcome to Book Cafe Podcast.
It's great to be here.
Okay, thank you so much for making the time to speak to us because you obviously have a very busy schedule. But first of all, as I mentioned to Tenet, that in our podcast, we try and reach a broad audience. So it's not necessarily just cricket lovers, but also anybody who loves reading books. So would you mind telling us just a little bit about yourself, your background, where you were born, where you grew up, and what you do for a living, etc., so we can get everybody up to speed?
That's fine. I grew up in Zimbabwe. I grew up in the capital city of Harare. I was the fifth born of seven. Now I say seven. That's from mom and dad, my mom and dad. But my dad was married twice before me, before my mom, and he had two sons and two daughters. So in total, it's 11. But then with my mom and dad, it's 7. And I was the fifth of that, if that makes sense. And obviously, big family. So you're always outside playing with your brothers and sisters. So those are my early childhood memories before cricket took over. So when I went to primary school, cricket was introduced at the primary school that I was going at. So there were 3 schools that cricket was introduced to. So Zimbabwe Cricket was doing a program to spread cricket into the 4 corners of the country, because at that time it was known to be an elitist sport. And I grew up in a high density suburb where we only played football and a little bit of athletics, because obviously those they are cheap to to participate in. Now, so I went for the trials because everyone had to go for the trials, and my first coach, Stephen Mangongo, felt that I was quite natural in how I held the cricket bat and how I threw and tried to bowl at that time, the cricket ball. So if he felt that you were natural or you had potential, you were then asked to go obviously on the right, and then the others were asked to go to the left, and then the ones that were picked had to be at practice after school at 2:00, and that was from Monday to Friday, and we were pretty much not allowed to play any other sports. So you can understand that from an early age of 9, it was cricket on a daily basis, and with the good coaches that we had, there was only one way, and that was success. So yes, I'm a cricketer. Oh, I was a cricketer. I was a cricket player. Now I am a cricket coach. So that gives you the background, and I'm sure with the questions that will come, we'll be able to cover in the bits inside.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is absolutely a wonderful introduction because obviously I myself am a huge cricket fan, and hence the reason why I picked up the book in the first place. And the name itself is actually very interesting. You've entitled the book "Keeper of Faith," and I'm assuming that it must be some sort of play on words. So, would you mind telling us a little bit about how you came up with the title of this particular book?
Yeah, well, I had two names. I had 2 names that I had picked. So one of the first name that I had in mind was from Highfield to Highfield. That was the first one that I wanted to pick. So Highfield is the name of the place where I grew up. So it's Highfield put together. Now, and then Highfield as in high and field separated. So that was the first name that I had. So from Highfield to Highfield as in highest on the field of being a captain. So that's what I thought, but I felt that was only ending to a time when I was high on the field as captain in the team, because that ended, a while back. And when I published the autobiography in 2018, so there was going to be, it wasn't really going to make sense. So then I thought, keeper of faith, because I'm a wicket keeper in cricket. And then the later part of my life had to do with faith. I wanted to find some life answers, and I felt that it was a faith. My life had taken a faith direction. So I went on a spiritual journey. So it was a religious journey, and so I thought, well, I'm a keeper in cricket, and then life has taken a turn to faith. So let me join those two, and then that's how I came up with the name.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, I think that the wicket keeper is obviously the most underappreciated player on the field, because they have a job where your mistakes are highlighted more than the triumphs. So yes, I think that it is actually a wonderful title for a book, and I think it very aptly and astutely and articulately captures your particular journey from a wicket keeper to a man of faith. We will definitely come back to both a little bit. But first, Tatenda, what I want to do is, I obviously have had the pleasure of reading the book about 6 months ago when we first started corresponding. And in the first particular chapter, I was extremely blown away by one particular phrase that you used to describe Zimbabwe. You called Zimbabwe the breadbasket of Africa. And that is something that was like a real eye opener for me, because as an outsider, we always assume that perhaps it is South Africa that may be the country that everybody in Africa aspires to. But you've used the word breadbasket. So tell us, for those of us who've not had the pleasure of visiting Zimbabwe yet, that why you've used this word breadbasket, and what more can you tell us about Zimbabwe as a country itself?
So back in those days, Zimbabwe was the breadbasket of Africa in all senses. My father was from Malawi, and they went all the way from Malawi to Zimbabwe. So they went through Mozambique to Zimbabwe. Why? Because the jobs were being found in Zimbabwe. So people were moving from different countries, from different neighboring countries, going to Zimbabwe because there was stability in Zimbabwe at that time. It's definitely not the case at the moment. I think things have started to improve a little bit now. But neighboring countries were more neighboring people, people in neighboring countries were actually going to Zimbabwe to find jobs. Now, you will hear of people going to South Africa for jobs. That's only the recent past. In the 80s, when we got our independence, I think obviously Mugabe is known for a lot of reasons. However, I think one of the things that he did so well, probably in the first 10 years as the president, was to have peace with all races. And then, the education system was the best in Africa. That was number two. And number three was, he kept the industries going. So instead of, chasing the white people out of the country because we had gained our independence, he did not. He kept everything civil. And because of that, there were jobs for everyone. Anyway, we'll get into the other details a bit later. However, so Zimbabwe was a nice place to be in. It's still a very nice place to be in. It's still a rich country in terms of mineral, agriculture, manufacturing, the best weather. I'm not being biased here, but the best weather in the world. And minerals, we're talking, different minerals. We're talking diamonds, we're talking copper, we're talking gold, we're talking platinum, we're talking lithium. So we're talking plenty asbestos. So we're talking plenty of minerals. So it still has potential. Still a very green, lovely country, but it has gone through some rocky times.
Absolutely. Well, I think that that does put it quite succinctly, Tatenda, that what good government can do to help. But in the book itself, I think in the first few chapters, you also mentioned something that at one point your mother was also feeling some sort of hesitancy, or how should I put it? She was wondering out aloud whether the people were actually better off under Ian Smith's regime as opposed to Mr. Mugabe's. And for your own feelings, I think were left a little ambiguous in the book itself. But if I were to put you on the spot and ask, do you agree with the summary that your mother had made, or do you feel that anything was better than having to live under a white minority rule, and colonization? That being free was more important than being under what Ian Smith had brought.
Now, I think first of all, when I'm answering any question, I'd like to go back to a definition of anything, right? Now, seeing that you've put me on a spot here, I want to separate between how a mother would look at a family and how a man would look at a family. Maybe even go to the extent of looking at how a boy can look at a family. So if you had asked me as a boy, if you had asked me that question as a boy, I wouldn't know how to answer, because I'm busy just playing outside with my friends, and that's what's most important to me. But then if you're asking a mother, any true mother would tell you that the first thing that they think about is to put food on the table for their family, is to feed her children. So when things started going bad in Zimbabwe, my mother was a little bit worried if we were going to continue being able to, or she was going to continue being able to put food on the table for us, lots of kids that were running around in the house. So yes, I could, now that I've grown up and I understand how it is to be a parent, I can understand where she was coming from. However, when I look at things in perfection. So I try to look at how, which I did cover in the book, how Zimbabwe could have progressed to have freedom together with prosperity, which I think it still can be achieved, I think.
Absolutely. No, I think that's fair enough, Tatenda, because I can completely understand now your mother's perspective, and obviously you were very young at the time, and so you're now, I believe, into your 40th year, so you obviously have a different outlook on life, and obviously it will change with time as well, with more knowledge, etc. and whatnot. So yeah, I think that's very well said. Now, Tatenda, let's come a little bit towards the cricketing aspect of it. You did mention very early that there was at one point a chance that you mentioned in the book that you were also very fascinated by football, and at one point that you had to make a choice between football and cricket, and your coaches kind of pushed you in the direction of cricket, for which we're extremely grateful for, obviously because of the way you've played the game. But coming to those early years, you also paid a lot of prominence to the Flower family. Andy Flower, your immediate captain when you entered the national team at the age of 18. But his father, Bill, was also very influential on you. Can you tell us a little bit about Bill Flower, Mr. Bill Flower?
Yeah, I think before I talk about Bill Flower, I know I was crazy about football, but like I did mention, I wasn't, I couldn't play football because we had to practice on a daily basis. Well, I wasn't as crazy as, Bangladeshi, supporting Argentina and Brazil. I wasn't to that extent. I think it's been fascinating for me to experience that. It's extremely fascinating that another country would have such love for another country like that. It's amazing. Anyway, so yes, I was quite good in football. I was, at a later stage in the high school, I was quite good at other sports as well. But yes, I did learn a lot from Andy Flower as a player, and still learning from him as a coach. However, Bill Flower, his father, it was very dear to my heart for many reasons. You ask any cricketer who's gone on to play international first class, or any cricketer, they will tell you their first coaches and the ones that make a real impact in their lives. And Bill Flower was one of those. For me, there were two outstanding when I was young, and that's Bill Flower and Stephen Mangongo. Two different characters, two different ways of coaching, but there are a lot of things that I took out of them. My wife wanted to make a surprise for me, over the summer, and she said she's going to visit Bill Flower because Bill Flower hasn't seen he hasn't been feeling so well. So we haven't caught up in a very long time. It's just over phone calls. So my wife wanted to make a surprise, but that surprise was to take both my sons to go and visit him. I mean, he's 6 hours away, 6 hours drive away, and that was going to be a massive surprise for him. And what a surprise for me! I mean, that she would think I would treasure that, which certainly I will. So because she knows, how I feel about Bill. So Bill, he just wanted a situation where we were exposed, and he knew that if we are exposed to enough cricket, we would make it. So that's Bill. So I love him to bits. There's not more that I can say about him that would not make me a little bit emotional.
Indeed. And I think the affection that you have for both Andy and Bill is very apparent, and it shows in the book as well. Now, Tatenda, just before we talk about the start of your international career, there is just one last point which I'd like to touch upon, which I think will be also a huge surprise for a lot of readers and listeners as well as viewers, where you mentioned that up to age level cricket, the Zimbabwean players were actually at par or even better than the South African counterparts. And you also mentioned the great Hashim Amla as one of your age level opponents whom you've competed against as well as bested. Can you tell us a little bit more about that particular era and how things may have changed afterwards as to why the South African graph kept going up, but the Zimbabwean graph after age level cricket kind of started to stagnate?
I think during those days we had a very strong school system. If my memory serves me right, I think the school system had more money than the Zimbabwe cricket itself. And that was mainly because of the private schools. So the private schools have always been run well, and they've always had, a little bit of money. And thus, the players that came from poor backgrounds, like myself, we were then given a scholarship to go to a good school, or to go to a Group A school. And when we went to a Group A school, we went into this system, which was well run and which had been producing players for years. So now, it used to be really competitive. Schools cricket used to be very competitive, and that's where players would be selected into under 14s, under 16, and under 19s. We never used to have under 17s at that time. So there were those three. So after under 16, you knew straight away that you had to push for under 19. So if it meant you had to practice more, because you're 2 years younger than the under 18s, so you have to put in more. So because of that effort of the ones that are trying to push into an age group which is a little bit higher than them, that made players work harder, which is something that I'm trying to introduce here at BKSP, is players are trying to go back. Whereas when we had our very strong age group system, players were trying to push forward. So here you find that players would, after making under 14, if they are still eligible for under 14 again, they'll want to play under 14 again. But you've already made that you are good. You've already shown that you're good for under 14. Push for under 16. It will be tough, yes, but it will make you learn quicker. However, let's go back to the question. So we were always pushing forward rather than pushing back. So that's how we were stronger. That's how we were faster. Before we reached a certain age. I played under 19 3 times, and by the time I finished my final year, I was already, that much faster than I got into the national team, into the national squad. So that system, the private school system, had a strong pillar, was a very strong pillar, and it's still a strong pillar to date. The government school system has got the numbers, but without the private school system, it just collapses, because the players here don't have secondary schools or high schools where there is cricket. So that's how they fall off. So if there was a way to merge them, then there will be more cricketers that will be produced in Zimbabwe. So number 2 is we used to tour. So every time you met the national team, you would tour neighboring countries. And then obviously you'd start to make friends, because cricket is such a sport that you easily make friends around the world. I started playing against Hashim Amla when he was 13. I started playing against, a lot of the South African, the Dale Steins, and then we started playing against each other, under 14s, under 16s, going on like that. And obviously, when you're both young, you want to gauge where you are against the players that you're playing against. And to answer your question about why I felt that I was better than them at that, at those levels, at under 19s, I got player of the tournament. So I cannot be player of the tournament if I'm not a better player.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So now I got a player of the tournament and ended up 8th. Now imagine if our team was a bit stronger. Because we had a very difficult team, because we had very senior players and then very junior players. We didn't have the ones in the middle bracket. So we had Brandon Taylor, Elton Chugumbura, Waddington Mwayenga. These were players that were 2 years underage. So they were just, getting into the speed of under 19. Now, the difference now, to answer the second question, the difference now is, when you're playing for Zimbabwe, we used to play something like 15 to 17 ODIs, maybe 15 to 20 ODIs a year, one-day internationals. And then we used to play about 7 test matches a year. Now, South Africa would play something like, 12 to 15 test matches a year. And then they would play, 30, 35 ODIs a year. Now, because of the difference in the number of games, you're never going to compete. So whereas my progression graph would be like that, for someone who's playing more games against tougher competition, his graph will go higher. Now, if you look at Hashim Amla's statistics, because he was there at under 19, that I was player of the tournament. You look at Hashim Amla, you look at JC Ryder, you look at Ross Taylor, you look at those players, and you look at their statistics. I own my debut at 18. At the end of my career, though I retired early, but it was after 12 years, I played 28 test matches. Now, if you look at Hashim Amla's record, you are getting to over 100 test matches.
Exactly.
So there's no way I can compete.
Yeah.
And then you look at how many ODIs did I play? I played, I think, 150 ODIs. Now, those guys will be touching, over 200. You see, so there's no chance. there's no chance. Now you go back to what Buflower said. If you're given more games, you're going to show what you can do. They've got more opportunities. So that's why someone wrote an article and said Tatenda was born in the wrong country. Had he been born in India, where you'd have played enough, then who knows what I could have really, shown that I can do.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that that sums it up really nicely, Tatenda, the gist of this entire section of the conversation, that practice makes perfect, and the more you play, the better you are going to get. So yes, thank you so much for that. Now, Tatenda, let's come to just prior to your international debut. In fact, that particular section, you obviously said that you made your debut at 18, you became vice captain at 19, and you became the captain of Zimbabwe at the tender age of 20. And for our viewers and listeners who may not be aware, you were the youngest test captain ever in 150 years of cricket. You were the youngest captain, and you were also the first black captain for Zimbabwe. And something else that really surprised me, which I think I was very happy to discover, you even beat Ashwell Prince to the job. Ashwell Prince was the first black captain for South Africa, but you were appointed before him. That particular milestone, it must have really meant something special. Can you tell us a little bit more about that appointment? Yeah.
Well, I think what I felt was special was when I was vice captain at 19. I think when I became captain, there were other things that were happening behind closed doors, which, all things being equal, it might not have been that early. Yes, I think, I was going to be captain at a young age, but I don't think it was going to come this early, because then obviously in the book, it's all covered in the book. But being recognized as vice captain when everything is normal at the age of 19 meant something. I know because I was told by several players that I had earned respect, from players for two main things. Number one was my never die attitude on the field, regardless of the situation. I just didn't know how to give up. I still don't know how to do that. So that was number one. And then number two was I never used to backbite. I never used to backbite or backstab anyone. Yeah. So if I had a problem with you, Omar, I would come to you. I would knock at your door. I would come to you and I would say, let's sit and talk about this. I didn't like what you did with me here, so, or whatever you believed, we would talk about it. And after we finished talking about it, that's it. So I wasn't as scared. I wasn't afraid of confronting whatever problem that I feel someone has wronged me, or a problem that I think will affect us on the field. So I think the players, or the ones that I've spoken to, say that they felt that was quite mature. And I earned a lot of respect, in the team because of that. So that's why being vice captain holds a dear place in my heart, more than being captain itself. When I then became captain, obviously I did mention the things that were happening behind closed doors. However, everything was happening too fast for me to even comprehend what was going on. So I don't think I even had enough time to really digest what it meant and how it was supposed to make me feel. Because, also being my character, that it was about, okay, now I'm captain, we have a series coming up against Sri Lanka, we have to win the series and we have to win the next game, and then straight onto the job. So I never really had time to digest, what it meant, and and how I was actually supposed to feel about it.
Exactly. Well, I think that that's really well said, Tatenda. In fact, after you had gotten the captaincy, and you've already alluded to this in the book several times, you always put your best foot forward for the interests of your team and your players. And there was never a one particular moment where you took a decision for yourself, but you always had the interests of the team in mind. But I seem to allude to the fact that it was a lot like Moses and the children of Israel, where he tried doing his best for them, but then they still ended up worshiping the calf. And you had a very similar moment with your own players at the time. And if I can just read this one particular line from the book, which I really enjoyed very much. You wrote that you were swimming across an ocean for players who wouldn't jump a puddle for me. This one particular line is probably the most eloquent and beautiful statement, to sum up a very sad situation, if I may say so. But can you tell us a little bit more about this particular line that you've written?
So there's a bit of a background, obviously when if someone was reading the book, they'll be able to, get the background to it. So when I then made the national team, there was an exodus of players. So when those players left, it left, a big hole in the team. It left a lot of, inexperienced players, stepping up to play international cricket. And that is the team that I was to lead. And then obviously, now that I'm a leader, I start going to all these meetings that I didn't go before. Because as a vice captain, I had an agreement with Hitstrick that I wouldn't go into these meetings because I felt that I was still learning the trades of the game. But now I have to go to these board meetings. I have to, leadership people in the country. And I started realizing other things that I didn't know. I mean, I was just a cricketer. And I felt I just want to enjoy my sport. And I played cricket because I enjoyed the sport. And then I didn't know that I was that good. And then because I was that good, I started, competing against others in other countries. And then obviously that comes in with popularity, that comes in with money, but that comes in with joining sport and politics, and it goes, the list goes on and on. Now I'm starting to realize that there's obviously a lot of money that is there in sport. But now this time I'm not realizing my own money, because the money that's coming into my bank, I know it, but this is now the whole picture. So this is the money that comes from ICC. This is how we are going to use it because I'm now going to this meeting. And I started realizing that because I was, as a captain, I believed that you cannot really captain people when you don't really know their background. So I took time to understand each and every player. So I would invite them for lunch or dinner at my house, and I would, try to go to theirs so that I have an understanding how this player lives like, and this player. And that way I'll be able to understand other things that I would not know that can actually impact us on the field. So I would realize that, he's the breadwinner at his house. But then I would try to find out how much is he getting. He's a young player, but he's an international player. Should he be getting what he's getting? So I started to question a lot of things, a lot of it regarding money, to be honest. And I felt, no, as a captain, it's not just me telling a player where to go and field and who to go and bowl at the batting lineup, etc. I have to be a real captain, and I have to look after the players, because it's going to be 4 p.m. during a test match. And I'll say, Mpariwa, please come in, run in, give me your last, 3 overs, try to bowl as fast as you can, and get me a wicket. I know he is going to put his body on the line because everyone is tired around 4 p.m. He is going to put his body on the line. He might risk injury to give me that 3 best overs that he can give me. What if he gets injured? That's on me as a captain. So what am I doing as a captain to look after his other interests? He's a breadwinner at his house. So I started advocating for them in terms of getting, proper pay. I was getting enough. I wasn't going for myself. I was getting enough. I was content with what I was getting. but I was not happy with what other players were getting. So I started to advocate for them. So I didn't really bring this out in the open. So so I started getting threats. I started getting a whole lot of things were happening behind, that they didn't know. So I was actually putting my life in danger for that. Now, when obviously it started getting worse and worse, they were then called aside, or some of these players were then called aside and were asked to do without me, and they just easily took that route. When I was putting my line for them, none of my interest, but all of their interest, and then they would do that. That's why I came up with that line.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, as I mentioned, I think that in the entire book, this was the one line that really, hit right here in the heart. And, it is regrettable that it came in under a difficult circumstance. But kudos that you managed to get through that difficult period. And I can only, reading the book itself, it's really hard not to get emotional, about a situation like that. And the fact that, this is real life and your life was in danger at one point and you were worried about your family. So I cannot imagine what you may have had to go through at that particular moment. So, Tatenda, moving on. So let's come to the year 2003. And the 2003 Cricket World Cup, the ODI World Cup, was obviously taking place in Africa, where South Africa and Zimbabwe were the co-hosts. And my memories from that particular World Cup wasn't a very good one because Bangladesh couldn't win a single game. But we did have one African success story vis-a-vis Kenya making it all the way to the semifinals. But for Zimbabwe, something poignant happened. Andy Flower and Henry Olonga both had the black armband protest. And even though in the book you've always mentioned how you and Andy Flower were always, shoulder to shoulder with regards to almost everything, you saw this particular incident in a different light. Can you tell us a little bit more about the black armband protest and what your thoughts were and what you felt about that incident?
Yeah, so I think Andy and Henry did not let the players know what was going on. They felt that it was a fight that needed no other support, and they knew that it was a dangerous fight, and they felt compelled to make this stand. And I think it was a day before or a couple of days before the first match that they brought it into the open that they were going to do this. Now I was only young, so I just remember thinking, oh, okay, they're going to do this, but I didn't really. I think first of all, I didn't really believe they would do it because it was that dangerous. So that's number one. And then when I then had an interview together with Andy, because we used to have interviews together. They always used to have me and Andy having interviews together. So, and they would start with Andy and then come to me, or start with me and then go. That's how we knew that we used to answer questions pretty much the same. And then he, though I know that Andy he's got a variety choice of words and he really brings it out in a way that I can only admire. But on this day, it was slightly different. So we were taken to the, close to the center of our sports club, just the pitch. And we were sitting back to back. They would ask Andy or ask me and then ask Andy like that. So that's how the reporters did it, the journalists. And then so they're asking us questions, we're answering. And then one question to Andy, and that question was, Andy, do you think England should visit Zimbabwe? And then Andy says, no. And then I remember I went like this, like, what? We are prepared. We've been preparing. We had worked hard. I remember particularly the swim sessions. They were tough and we had worked hard. And I'm like, we've got a chance we can beat England here. We had home advantage, whatever. And then Andy then says that. And I just looked, I was like, what is Andy talking about now? So then it was then, okay, a black armband is really going to happen. It's then because it was just rumors in the changing room, And then he says, I didn't even listen to what he said because I was still in shock. And then he gave his reasons, and then the question was brought to me. So, Tatenda, do you think England should come? So I said, I think England should come because we are cricketers. So if England doesn't come and we get our wages from playing a game, and if they were not playing a game, we're not going to get wages. That was my answer. So completely different answers, Andy and I. So then anyway, the interview finished, and then on our way back, I said, Andy, what was that? And then he says, Tatenda, you know what? You're a young player. You are doing so well. You've been playing well, continue to play well. You, as I've always said, you're going to be a leader soon. Just continue what you're doing. Don't pay attention to this. You will hear a lot of things that will happen. The media is going to be, the media is going to be heavy. Everything is going to be never as you have seen it before. So don't pay attention to it. Enjoy your cricket. Continue to enjoy your cricket. And let's have a good World Cup. Well, I respected Andy. I still respect him. So I just thought, well, Andy, that's what Andy has said, so that's what I would do. So I didn't really keep, probing into the black armband. But yes, the following day we were playing against Namibia. And yes, Andy and Henry had the black armband, and it was to mark the death of democracy in the country.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it just goes to show that even the best of friends can have very diverse opinions and diverse worldviews. And obviously, that's also a part of what makes all of us human. So, yes. So, thank you so much, Tatenda.
That's true. That's true. One thing that I've always mentioned, that I'm always speaking to my wife about regarding that, I think a lot of people think that having different opinions means that we're enemies, or means that we are fighting, or even if we are to have different opinions right now, it's not a fight. It just simply means I've got a different opinion to yours and you've got a different opinion to mine. That should not have a bearing on any emotion, positive or negative. It's just an opinion. We're not all going to like, the color yellow. We're not only all going to like the color red. It's just someone might like a different color to another. But that shouldn't only be limited to colors, but it should go across different, different things and avenues.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's very well said, Tatenda. Now, still staying with Andy Flower, Tatenda, I had a question for you, which will be a little technical. So, it's with regards to wicket keeping and wicket-keeper batters in general. When you first entered the team, you were obviously, you mentioned in the book that you were playing as the specialist batter around that time, and Andy was doing wicket-keeping duties, right? And obviously, like you alluded to in the beginning of this episode, that if you were born in India, for example, you would have played a lot more games. And I feel the same with Andy Flower, that if he had been born in England or Australia and he was playing for a bigger nation, quote unquote, his outstanding record would have probably been highlighted even more, because he's one of the very few wicketkeeper batters who is averaging over 50 plus in Test cricket. So the question I wanted to ask was, do you feel that perhaps you should have been the designated keeper and Andy should have maybe batted up the order as a specialist, so that instead of averaging 50 as a wicketkeeper batter, maybe he could have averaged even more? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that happened soon after. Because when I met the squad, and I was in the team for 2 years, but at that time I was not good enough to make my debut.
Mm.
So he continued as a wicket keeper, but then it was him who pushed for me to play as a better.
Mm.
Because I remember in Sri Lanka, we were playing a warm-up game, or I arrived after they played. So I was writing my exams in school. So after my final exam, I was on the flight the following day. So I'm jet lagged, and I get there, and we're losing a warm-up game, and Andy was livid. And then he says, we can't even score. I think we just failed to score 200. So he says, we can't even score 200. And he says, then he turns to me and says, Siba, are you ready to play tomorrow? Anyway, so I wasn't going to say no, but obviously knew that it was going to be tough. However, Andy, I know for a fact, Andy believed in my batting. He believed in my play, even in my keeping, because if I had not been injured in England when I joined the squad when I was 16, I think I just turned 17, I was going to play the test match at, not at Lord's, the second test match. I don't remember where the second test match was, but then I got injured in the warm-up game when I was promoted to bet number 4 against Yorkshire. Now, his reason was, you are betting well and you are keeping better than I am doing. That is what he told me. I think he dropped a couple of catches at Lord's. Lord's is a very tough place to keep. But anyway, he had dropped a couple of catches and he wasn't happy with him. And Andy's an honest person. Andy is an honest person, and he would just tell you things as they are, which is what I liked. He didn't go around in circles. It was straight to the point. You either accept it or you don't accept it. But he would not tell you any other. He would tell you the truth. So now let's fast forward to that series against, it was a triangular series, West Indies, Sri Lanka, and Zimbabwe. And he says, are you ready to play tomorrow in the second warm-up game before the series started? And then then I played as a better. I think I was a high scorer. Mm-hmm. And then he said, yeah, you play as a better in the series. I had a terrible series. However, I think that is the only series that I played as a better. Mm-hmm. After that decision was then made for him to play as a better. And you are right, because of his age, you had to protect him so that he plays more as a better. And that's how he ended up, betting the way he did. I mean, though in test matches, he had already started to show that he is an outstanding better. Yeah. But then we never got to play together for much longer after, because of what we just mentioned in your previous question.
Exactly. And I'll just digress a little bit, Tatenda, and just mention why I'd asked this particular question, because in Bangladesh there was always this belief that Mushfiqur Rahim was not just a great wicketkeeper, but he was also arguably the best test batter that we had. But he preferred to keep wickets in tests as well for a long time, such that he, in fact, became the first and only cricketer, if I remember correctly, in Test cricket history to score 2 double centuries. So obviously, this was a brilliant personal triumph. But then I was also thinking that if he wasn't keeping, could he have probably scored a triple century, for example? Because obviously it's a lot harder for a wicketkeeper to score double centuries, and that's the reason why it is such a rare feat. And he already has 3 of them, if memory serves me right. One as a specialist batter and 2 as a wicketkeeper batter. So it's something that not even the great Adam Gilchrist has managed to do, or Andy himself, etc. So yeah, I think that what you've said is absolutely right. That because of Andy's age and to protect him as a batter, it was better that he goes to them. And there's also another story about Kumar Sangakkara and Alex Stewart, who had very diverging careers after they gave up keeping and took over the keeping. And England's fortunes and Sri Lanka's fortunes also, digressed a little bit. But we'll skip through that question because we can go on forever with that particular discussion. But I really want to come back to your story. Around now, one of the great highlights of the book itself, Tatenda, well, has to be, for me at least, was your personal relationship with your wife, Loveness, and the way that she has supported you throughout your career. And I think that's such a wonderful part of the story. So we wouldn't be doing justice to the book if we didn't talk a little bit about your lovely wife, Loveness. Please tell us about the role that she has had in your life and continues to play till this day, even after retirement.
I actually wrote I wrote a poem too, I think last week.
Yeah.
And I said, I said to her, I just said, I wrote "Good Morning, Love." I said, I hope I'll be able to remember exactly, but it'll be something along those lines. But I said, you are my air. Sorry, I said you are my heart to the body, you are my air to the world, something like that. Like I was taking a few things that are important and just saying that you are that. So I mean, and she is that to me. It's very easy for someone to believe in what you are doing, to back what you are doing when they also believe what you are doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's very rare to get someone to go with you even if they don't see where you're going. Mm-hmm. So there are several, decisions that I've made in life where I would say, "Love, I'm seeing things this way." And she would say, because she's a free person, to me, she is free. And I've always wanted it to be that way, that she must be able to express what she feels without thinking that she would displease me in any way. Mm-hmm. So she would say, I don't see it that way, but it's you, and I will support your decision. You do not know how that makes me feel. Like that someone who has got a different opinion and a different way of seeing things, but is willing to forego the way they are seeing things to go with my direction. I mean, so that is to sum up what Loveness has done for me over the years. Loveness knows nothing about cricket, hardly, just this, that, and the other, right?
Yeah.
But when I didn't have a person to practice with, right, and I couldn't locate anyone to have extra practice with, she would feed balls for me for hours in the net. Wow. So she would forego her duties to look after the children, or she loves doing her house chores. I mean, she could be, moving around furniture and things the whole day, and she would not get tired. That's her. She likes doing that. So she would forego that. And she loves shopping as well. That goes without saying. So she would forego that and say, okay, so you want to practice, you don't have anyone to practice. The bowling machine is here, the wicket is there. I used to have a net at my house. Mm-hmm. And then she would feed balls for me. If I was hitting balls for 3 hours, 4 hours, she would do that.
Wow.
Now, that is, that's Loveness. And most importantly, when I was talking about the first point, most importantly is she would never say, that decision that you've made us do this, we are in this situation because of this. She would never do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If I made a decision and the decision was wrong,
yeah,
she would never come back and say, but I told you, or we should have gone that. It's done. It's already. It's we agreed that that's what we're doing, and we move on.
Right.
So I mean, so she means the world to me. And it's exactly that. She means the world.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, I'm so happy to hear that, because I think in a lot of success stories, there's always the women don't get enough credit for the sacrifices and the support that they've made. But I think that in your particular story, you can see that she's right there with you every step of the way. And it is because of her support that obviously that you've been able to have all of your triumphs and successes. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing it, Tatenda. Now, Tatenda, we are obviously coming near the end of our discussion here, but before we let you go, we are after all a podcast about books, so I just have to ask you very quickly. You are an avid reader, I know that, but is there anyone, and you obviously alluded to yourself being a man of faith. If I were to ask you that, do you have a particular chapter or book from the Bible that you particularly love to read? What would that be? What would be that chapter or book from?
I like to read Romans. I like to read
Romans. Okay.
Romans. I like to read Romans. I think it's particularly Romans, 4 going to Romans 5, when it talks about the Abraham's faith and that he staggered not at the promise of God through unbelief, but was strong, giving praise. And it just brings me back to how what real faith is. Because I think most of the times we feel that we think that we've got faith in something, but whereas it's not faith but hope. But when someone has got faith does not lose. Faith does not have any disappointments. It's so to know that he staggered not at the promise of God through unbelief. So he staggered not for 25 years. So an old man, 75 years, promised to have a son, and then he years, and then for the promise to be realized. Now, this is a person who was who didn't have any children anyway. And then he is 75 years, and then when he gets the promise, then he waits for another 25 years to then get the promise. So that gives me a realization of what real faith is. And whenever I feel like I want to achieve something, or I'm pushing towards something, and I feel that, it's not going according to what I really want, then I think, no, you are saying that because you're hoping. It's not faith. Then I go back to read that, because it's like this. Let me put it in this sense. I've got 25 cents, and 25 cents is the buying power to a loaf of bread. And I am hungry, and I feel like I need to eat, and I've got 25 cents. It doesn't matter whether the shops are 10 kilometers from where I am, as long as I'm holding 25 cents, which is the purchase power, I can never lose faith. Because I have got the purchase power. Yes, I may get more tired when I'm walking towards the 10-kilometer shops. I may have to go through the mountains, and I may, I may stagger a bit, but as long as I'm holding 25 cents, I will feel weaker, but mentally, I will still be okay. I will still continue. But if I don't have 25 cents, I'm hoping that along the way, I'm going to get someone who's going to give me 25 cents, or I'm going to pick up 25 cents. But there won't be any push for you to get to the point where you want to go to, because you don't have the purchase power. So I believe that with the real faith, which is like your 25 cents, you will, yes, it will be tough. Yes, you will have to walk and get tired, sweat, whatever else, but you don't lose hope because you've got the purchase power.
You've got that, right? Absolutely.
So that's how, when I'm like little daisy about anything, I then go back to say, do I have the faith of Abraham? Then I always go back to that. That's why it's my favorite to read.
Wonderful. I think that's a very beautiful way of putting it. Is there any particular book that you're reading right now, your current reading pile or list, that just for out of curiosity for any of our viewers?
I'm still reading the one that you gave me.
Oh, the one I gave. Okay,
I haven't finished because
you
see, I've got this bad habit that sometimes I read 2 or 3 books at the same time.
Oh, that's a good habit. I can assure you that you're absolutely fine in reading multiple books, because I face exactly the same thing. And I just can't seem to stick to just one. But what was the name of the book for our viewers and listeners?
So I've actually got it right here. So I'm reading this one for now.
Right. First Muslim by Leslie Hazelton, right? Okay.
Yeah.
How have you found it so far? Has it been a good read for you? Yeah.
I think it's been a lovely read. I think she's a great writer. I enjoy her writing. I think the way the introduction, the first chapter was amazing, where she was giving the background of different leaders in religions, how they are like, and then it comes to the second one. I got a little bit lost in the second chapter, because it was now bringing like a day-to-day historical events that happened that happened to him. Before I forget, the other book that I'm reading is The Power of a Subconscious
Mind.
Mind.
Power of your subconscious mind. Right.
Yeah. So I'm about to finish. I'm about to finish both of them. So I'm gonna be a little bit. I don't think I have any at the moment after this one. So
well,
I may have to do a little bit of searching. I think I'll be going to Dhaka soon. Anyway, so the second chapter. The second chapter is to do with it gives events as we're collected or as we're asked, and then it starts to flow again. So I'm enjoying it. I like to know things. I don't like to assume. And I think a lot of religious people make a mistake of saying, okay, I'm in this religion, so I close off to anything else. I think there's nothing wrong with being with being enlightened. And it's not, I'm in this corner, so anyone else that in that corner, I don't care about you. For me, it doesn't make any logic. So it has been a fascinating book for me. So, and it's the interest in this. I mean, sometimes because I read a lot of psychological books, they can be a little bit confusing when you're moving from one book to another. But with these 2 books, they're totally, separate one from another. So it's easy to keep track where I was, etc.
Fabulous. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it, Tatendas. I had completely forgotten about it before you, but thank you for mentioning that. Now, Tatendas, we've obviously gone over time, but before we really let you go, there is just one last question which I have. In the beginning of the interview, you did mention that you were in Bangladesh. You're working as a coach for the BKSP. For our viewers and listeners who don't know, is the Bangladesh National Sports Institute, where you're working with a lot of young cricketers. But for us as fans who still want to see you, playing and coaching, can we hope to see you in any exhibition matches, or can we actually even hope to see you coaching a Bangladesh Premier League team, a BPL team, or any franchise, team? Any plans in the pipeline for all of those things?
So I've been playing some recreational games. I think in September we played in the Legends League tournament in India. I think that's going to continue yearly, and I think I'll make myself available for that. So so playing, I still enjoy it every now and again, here and there. In regard to coaching, I think coaching is what I am really enjoying now. And like any sport, as a player, or not only any sport, with anything in life, I think the difference between someone telling you that you're good at something and you knowing that you're good at something is from east to west. Because when people are telling you and then they're not there, you can easily be lost in the mist. But if you know that you're good at something, you know that eventually you end up somewhere. So I know that I'm really good at coaching, and I believe that at some stage I will be with a major team. It's just a matter of who's going to be lucky to have my expertise. I'm not bragging. I'm just telling you as it is.
Yes.
So right now, I can assure you, right now, the players that I'm working with, there are some players that I can ask you to write a few names down, and they will play for Bangladesh. Right. What I'm going to do for you is I'm going to write a couple of names, and look, 6-7 years, you are going to see them in the national team. I can guarantee you that. So so I know I love it. I love it. I think I'm a giver, and I, because of that, I really get drawn into it. And yeah, so yes, I know eventually I am going to be coaching one of the major teams. I've already started making some yards towards that. So yes, that is eventually going to happen.
Fantastic. Well, Tatenda, I think that we're very thrilled to hear that we have an opportunity to see you playing again, in Legends League cricket, and I can see you're wearing the jersey of the Manipal Tigers, so that's wonderful. And of course, we always have that hope that given your vast depth of knowledge about the game, that the authorities, whether it's the Bangladesh Cricket Board or the BKSP, that we can make use of your talents as a coach and to have you more involved with our cricketers, because I know that Bangladesh cricket can only benefit from your expertise. And let's hope for the best. I hope that if anybody from the BCB is watching, that they will take what you've said seriously and maybe even just, just recruit you for one of those posts. And just coming back to the book itself, first up, I just want to mention it once again. The book is called Keeper of Faith, Cricket, Conflict, and God, Zimbabwe's Age of Extremes. Tatenda, thank you so much for your time. You've been a wonderful guest. It's been a pleasure talking to you. All the best to you and everything that you're doing with your coaching and your exhibition games. And we hope to have you back again with us very soon for another episode.
Thank you. Thank you, Omar.
Thank you.
Yes.